Hi, another excellent endgame. It looks like a draw really. Black is going to play f5 and both players have a supported passed pawn and the king can't take the base pawn because otherwise the other pawn will queen, and same thing happens if white takes that f pawn. But there's a way for white to win here, and he's going to use an idea to get black's king to this square. See, black only has really these two squares for his king, and when black's king is in this square, white has a powerful threat of getting his king to d6, which would support this pawn to pushing forward, and that would actually be mate. So that is a very powerful threat. So white is threatening to move to d6 sneakily. Of course, white has many squares to roam. He has d4, he can use these squares, this square as well after this pawn will move to f5. Now the only problem is when white's king is here on f4 or on these dark squares, he can really go back and forth, or maybe circulate these squares, but the result will always be the same. Like, black's king will either be always on f7 when white's king, sorry, actually this square won't be available because otherwise this pawn will queen. So yeah, white will have these squares only. So if the black king is on f7 when the white king is in f4, then white can't win because white can't force this king to go to d8. White wants black's king to go to d8 because then white has this threat of going to d6. Therefore, it takes 3 moves for white to go to f4, and from there to f5, and to e6 and to d6, or e5 and d6. So 3 moves to get there. So white has to make sure that 1, 2, 3, and you also have to count this pawn move, which black can always do. Let's say if white plays d4 right now, then black is actually doing better. Black kind of has the opposition because black plays f5. And then white is tied down to these 2 squares, and now black just goes back and forth, and white goes back and forth, and white can never make progress. Because if white takes this pawn now, then white has no threats. If white tries to queen this pawn, black queens first. The black king is safe on c7. So what we need to do in the beginning is to use triangulation. So we first play king to c4, a genius move. What does black have here? Not e3. He can play king d8, but then white would just play king d5 with the threat of king d6. So f5, now king d4, king d8 really only move, king e3, king c7, king f4, king d8, and now white takes the pawn. Notice how black's king is now on d8, so let's say black pushes that pawn. King here. If black continues to push that pawn, then it's going to be mate in 2. But let's say if black plays here, then white queens first and will easily pick up this pawn. So a lot of themes in this puzzle: the triangulation first, wasting a tempo, seeing how black doesn't have many moves. Black king only has these 2 repetitive moves, and he has this one tempo move, or should I say tempo waste. Tempo wastes are really important in the endgames, whereas tempo gainers are important in the opening. But the endgame you usually try to lose time. So thanks for watching.